Welcome back to all of our friends out there in the Boss Hole Transformation Nation. This is your host, John Brewer. Good to have you here on this installment of the Boss Hole Chronicles. Today I'm welcoming Mr. Vince DiPofi. Now, I've known Vince for many years. Actually, during the conversation, we realized just how many years. Vince is not only a friend and a colleague, but a client. He serves as the CEO for SSOE, which is an internationally ranked architecture and engineering firm based in Toledo, Ohio. SSOE just celebrated their 75th anniversary, I think it was last year, and they have grown from this smaller engineering firm to having a global presence, and to a significant degree because of the work that Vince was doing as he moved up through the ranks at SSOE. So today what we get to hear is Vince's journey and his story about not only his move into the C-suite as the CEO, but also as he prepares to exit and prepare the next level of leaders. It's a great team at SSOE. They just seem to be really dialed in on doing the right things to make sure that this transition of leadership takes place in a way that is not disruptive, but actually helps to elevate the organization and continue its remarkable growth. Vince is a graduate of the University of Toledo College of Engineering, and he stuck around the Glass City, started off as an intern, learned drafting at an actual drafting board, and just grew from that point on. So join me in welcoming Vince DiPofi, CEO of SSOE. Let's jump in. The Boss Hole Chronicles are brought to you by Real Good Ventures, a talent optimization firm helping organizations diagnose their most critical people and execution issues with world-class analytics. Make sure to check out all the resources in the show notes and be sure to follow us and share your feedback. Enjoy today's episode. Well, Vince DiPofi, welcome to the Boss Hole Chronicles. It's good to have you here.
Thanks, John. It's good to be here. I'm excited to be interviewed for this. I've seen many of your podcasts. You guys have been around for a while, so it's an honor to be considered for an interview.
Well, I appreciate that. And yeah, it's hard to believe we've been at this almost 5 years. And we've actually been talking to you about having you on the program for the better part of a couple of years, simply because our listeners out there in the Boss Hole Transformation Nation, especially our corporate leaders, I know they will benefit greatly from hearing your story and not only the origin of and certainly the path that you've followed to become the CEO at SSOE, which is one of the preeminent engineering firms around. I mean, I'm proud to say that they're based in Toledo, Ohio, my hometown, just celebrated its 75th anniversary a couple of years ago. But understanding that this story is about how you have grown and how you have grown into the role, but also helping the organization move forward as you begin in the next couple of years to step out. So I'm just very excited for that. I'm just going to let our listeners know right before I hit record, I was confirming with Vince when we met, and it was a little over 25 years ago when you worked for a company that was acquired by SSOE, another very well-known engineering firm, Avca. And that's kind of hard to believe. I remember meeting you and just so impressed with your drive. Later on, it comes as no surprise knowing that you're a captain per the PI reference profile. It's hard to believe 25 years, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Well, thanks, John. I appreciate that. It has been, we were talking, I was just thinking about actually the point that I met you and what we were doing then. We were working on business development together, and
Yep.
And I'll say this: you gave me some good advice, and it has stayed with me here. It was about learning how to do cold calls. I mean, it's a lot harder today because there's better filtering mechanisms, but
oh yeah,
learning how to do cold calls was really an excellent way to really understand BD and how to get in front of a customer. I mean, it took a lot of tries. I figured it out, but it takes, people who have not done cold calls, it takes a lot of courage to do that. So you're instrumental in getting me kicked off and understanding really the formal methods of BD learning.
Well, I appreciate that. And admittedly, though, I mean, your expertise was in the field of engineering. And so some people would say, well, that is a real departure. But, when you're a leader of a business, you're still very much in a business development role. You are very much exposed out there working in the community. And SSOE has not only a great mission for the company, but you have a very strong tie to the community and supporting other organizations. And so you're still doing the BD stuff to this very day. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely.
So Vince, let's step back a little bit. You have been in the role of CEO at SSOE for, is it 5 years now?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you would say I'm in my 6th year. I started 2020, January of 2020. So
Okay. So let's go back before that happened. I mean, when perhaps you were being considered or you caught wind that you may be a candidate for CEO, what did you think it would be like? And what was it actually like? I think people have these ideas of what it'd be like to be a CEO, and it is a heavy lift. So yeah, before and after, what did you think it would be like? And I want to get back also to the journey of being considered and moving into that role. But what did you think it would be like, and what surprised you the most about when you got in there?
yeah, well, there's a saying, and it's said by everyone who's ever been a CEO that you don't know what it's like till you are actually in the seat.
Okay.
I can 100% confirm that that is true.
Okay.
What did I expect? I mean, I'd worked for two great CEOs at SSOE, Tony Naiman and Bob Howell. I got to see them do their work. They were both very effective CEOs. They both did a good job, and I learned a lot from them. And I only saw, I guess I'll say, the external, the results.
Hmm.
I didn't see what was going on. So when I saw them say, hey, introduce a strategic initiative or introduce something we wanted to do different with the company, I'm seeing the output of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and also when they're addressing issues, I would see them, well, here's how we're going to address this issue or that issue. And I don't want to say it seemed easy, but they did it in a calm manner. They did it in a way it looked like it had been thought through. And I thought, okay, I should be able to do this job, but not
Yeah.
realizing how much really happens behind the scenes, how many different things you have to take into consideration. But honestly, it's amazing what hits your desk.
Okay.
And
Uh,
every day you walk in and there is something that you didn't expect to happen that day.
Okay.
Right? There's always something new. It's just amazing. And so whether it's happening in the marketplace with your clients, internal with employees, there is a lot that hits the desk and you spend the first year and I mean we've all heard, I think there's a book called The Imposter Syndrome.
Yeah.
Um, you feel absolutely. And the previous CEO, Bob Howell, told me this. He goes, "You're going to spend the first 6 months thinking I shouldn't be in this job," and he was 100% right. Thinking you, I mean, you really do feel like an imposter. It's overwhelming, and it's just so hard to explain until any CEO out there will understand what I'm talking about. It's really hard to explain until you're in the seat and realizing. And I would say, John, too. The other thing I didn't understand the full gravity of is every decision you make is impacting, in our company, the lives and families of 1,500 people,
Right.
right?
Right.
So every critical decision I make, that's a filter that I use. 1,500 people, is this gonna work out for me? Not to mention hundreds of clients that we work for too. So
Right.
it's there's a lot of self-imposed pressure as well. So I'll say, John, it's just the ferocity of things that hit your desk, the speed things just seem to move faster. So that would be my before and after viewpoints.
That makes total sense. At what point, Vince? I mean, the first 6 months, Bob's wisdom totally resonates. But when did you feel like you were kind of settling in? Was it within about a year, or because I want to talk a little bit about adaptation. We always talk about self awareness and adaptation. Self awareness, number one competency for being an effective leader, and you're a highly effective leader. Did you say it took a good 6 to 12 months to really kind of settle in, and you never really settle, but you know what I'm asking? Yeah.
Yeah. So it was interesting, John, because I overlapped COVID. I started in January of 2020 and
Oh
COVID
yeah.
kicked off in March of 2020. So we went right into the frying pan. In fact, one of our past CEOs, Tony Damon, he was going to be in town. We were going to get together for coffee. He was going to, just talk to me about being CEO and everything. And then he couldn't fly. Nobody could get on airplanes and all that
Right.
stuff. So we decided just to have a phone call. And I joked with him and I said, Tony, I said, hey, where'd you leave the pandemic playbook? And he goes, oh, well, he says it's in the third desk drawer on the left. Didn't you see it? Joking. But here's the thing that I'll say, I got an initiation on that phone call right there because Tony told me two things that got me through the pandemic and really the next 6 months.
Right.
He said two things. He says, one, you've got a great vision for the company. He said, that has to work in good times or bad. You can't say, well, COVID hit, I got to put the vision aside. He said, make the vision work during COVID. The other thing he told me, and this is where the weight of the job really hit me in that moment. He said, just because you're the new guy, you don't get to make bad decisions.
Mm.
He said, people are going to be looking to you. It's an especially tough time. It's crisis management. He says, and you don't get a pass because you're the new guy. If anything,
Right.
it's going to be worse. They're going to say he wasn't really cut out for the job. So that's what really steeled me to really think about the decisions I was making during COVID, sending people home, all those different things. So in one way, I had like a year of work crammed into, the first 6 months that I had. But
Yeah.
I'll say certainly it was, close to a year before I felt like, okay, I'm past the imposter syndrome. You never really get past the learning stage, but
Right.
yeah, it was a good 6 to 12 months. So it had that wrinkle of COVID pandemic hitting right as I'm starting to learn the job.
Man, I totally forgot I didn't forget about COVID. I forgot about the timing of that. And you know what's really interesting? I think this is a huge takeaway for our listeners, especially our business leaders out there, is that you've given us two really key variables. Number one, two former CEOs, your predecessor and another, that were available to you, that were accessible and able to speak into their own experiences and maybe even be that sounding board, even calm, saying, what you're experiencing is totally normal, Vince, other than COVID. But that is great wisdom. And I I would be very surprised that happens in the majority of transitions from one CEO to another. I think you have to have a very healthy, not only a healthy company, but healthy relationships at the senior-most level to make that happen. I think that's very unique. Did that ever strike you as unique?
Well, you want to be careful that you're I mean, you obviously have a concern that gee, if I keep calling these people, they're going to say, hey, am I
Oh,
still CEO? Are you the job? So
that's true.
I mean, one of them was planned, but let me say it was very, I guess I'll say selective.
Yeah.
Bob, we'd meet for breakfast once in a while and just, you know,
Yeah.
he knew what I was going through. So it was very intermittent because you do need to take the responsibility, but you want
True.
to rely on people. So yes, I had good relationships with them, which was really important. And I think that was helpful. So it was, very intermittent. I'd say over that 12-month period, first time, I might have touched base with each of them maybe a couple times, just,
Right.
like early in the pandemic. And then later on, it was kind of a check-in. Hey, how's it going? How's things happening with SSOE, and that. So,
Yeah.
you want to be careful about that, the guy that used to do the job doesn't feel like, hey, I'm now the
I'm still
unpaid
doing it.
CEO.
Right. Yeah, I'm not getting my paycheck anymore. Not the
Right.
same one. That's right. No, that is really good. And at the same time, a a council of advisors or a group of advisors or people to whom you can turn is whatever that looks like, so that you do not feel like you're an island out there. And the other thing is I think you've managed to surround yourself with really, really talented people. I mean, SSOE has always had a very high standard, I think, through the years, and has a reputation for that. And I mean, it's become, in over 75 years, a global engineering and architectural firm and project management. I mean, it's just grown so much, but with really, really good people. And we'll get to that in just a second. If we can sort of revisit sort of your personal growth as a CEO, as a professional, Real Good Ventures, we have had the honor and the privilege to work with SSOE, to work with you and members of the team and over the years. But I know that, tongue in cheek, I think that when we've met and we've talked about how you have grown as a leader, I think you mentioned, you would talk about Vince 1.0 and then Vince 2.0. I just think that's but I think that's very powerful because you have not remained stagnant. This has been a learning. Not only has the organization grown from your leadership, but also you have grown individually and professionally. Can you give us a little insight to that?
Yeah, so just for those that don't know the inside joke on 1.0 and 2.0, there was this, you know, prior to becoming CEO, and let's say a couple of years before that, the CEO that I was working with that time, Bob Howell, he had a heart to heart with me, and he said, "It's not your performance. You've got the capabilities to do this job." He goes, "It's how you approach people." He says, "You can be more abrasive. You can be your drive gets in the way of maybe being collaborative."
Okay.
And so when you look at how did I get to where I'm at was very successful. The company would give me things like go start a new office down in Mexico,
Uh,
um, go to China and turn the business around. It's not doing well. Those kind of things require somebody to jump in, hard driving,
yeah, a
maybe
captain.
even some more individual performance as opposed to teamwork.
Okay.
And so I've been successful. I brought in major accounts to the company. I was good at building relationships with clients, but could be overbearing. So I spent the 2 years prior to becoming CEO really focusing on how I work with people, becoming more approachable,
Yeah.
becoming less intimidating. I have a natural style. If you're listening on the podcast, you can't see that I'm talking with my hands, but I am. But you probably can tell I have a strong voice. I tend to talk loud and passionate, and that can get in the way of people giving you feedback,
Yeah.
of people wanting to collaborate with you. And so I had to undergo, and John, let's give the shout out here to your partner, Sarah Best. She was the one that I'll never forget the moment. There's always a moment where your light bulb comes on, and when Sarah, she did the PI and she did all the normal things, and she just looked at me and she goes, "I don't think you should be CEO." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" This was before I became CEO. She goes, "Nope, you're never going to get there. You're not the right guy." And Sarah is great at like throwing a brick through a window to
Yeah,
get your
she
attention.
is. Yeah.
And it got my attention. I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" And she explained to me. She goes, "Where you need to go and where you think you need to go are two completely different things." And you can't see me doing my hands, but she showed a funnel. You think everyone wants you to go like this, and my hands are wide apart going down to this narrow funnel. And she goes,
Right.
"We really want you to do this." And you're interpreting anything to rein you in as not being good. And so
Oh, okay. That's
I
that's
had
good.
to get over that. And then we spent some time on some specific ways, and it probably took 6 months to a year before people said, "Okay, he really has changed his demeanor, how he works with people." And that's when the nickname of 2.0 came up. But there was still, even when I became CEO, they thought, "Okay, did Vince make changes just so he could be CEO and he's gonna go back to how he was?" And I think
Right.
people found that wasn't the case. I really found that I could be a much more effective leader in changing my style and how I interface with people, and that really has been key to my success as a
Right.
leader, my growth and development. But I also learned that you think you get to CEO, you your learning is just beginning.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
I'm constantly, I have a development plan. I've been CEO for 5 or 6 years. I still have a development plan of things that I'm working on to improve. So this is it's a constant learning effort. But that's kind of the 1.0, 2.0 story. And one of the biggest compliments I get from people now is this is a very approachable person, and they never used to say that about me. Anyone in the company feels like they can walk up to me, have a question, talk to me, and I think approachability and
Yeah.
vulnerability.
Yeah.
Vulnerability, you don't get feedback unless you show some vulnerability, and I think that's an underrated characteristic in any leader.
Yeah.
Vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And And you're right. I mean, Sarah's amazing, and this is part of her real gifting in that work. I will tell you, if she were right here, she would say, but Vince is the one that did the work. She has, she would absolutely say that. And I think what's really, and it's so funny, Vince, is that I've always felt very comfortable talking to you, but I'm also a captain. That's my reference profile. So you and I kind of live in the same space, but I get that. And I think what we're hearing is there was a moment or a period of deep self-awareness, and you're still a captain. You're still a wide pattern captain with
Right.
that drive to go to China, that drive to go to Mexico. Let's send Vince to go make this stuff happen. And this adaptation through that insight and self-awareness and emotional intelligence has been that evolution. So I love that story. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. I really
Sure.
appreciate that. And again, it also takes a level of humility and also just transparency to be able to internalize that and go, okay, if I'm going to move there, if I'm going to move into this role, it's not about changing who you are. It's about understanding the circumstance and leveraging the tools for adaptation. So thank you for that. That is awesome. Let's talk about the next phase, because this journey for you, and you're helping to lay the groundwork for essentially your successor. I think SSOE, I think you're all doing a really creative thing. I think it's unique. Let's talk about how you are equipping your next successor, and it's going to be from more than possibly just one person, but just help us understand how you're getting ready to step out of the CEO role whenever that happens and let somebody else step into it.
Yeah. So one of the things actually we've done differently at SSOE relative to the CEO role is I've consciously and publicly identified successors, within the last several years. I wanted people to know it would probably be obvious anyway, but I'm transparent to a fault. And I wanted people to know these are the people I'm grooming for the job.
Mm-hmm.
This is why they're going to be doing the things they're doing. This is why I'm giving them assignments. Again, it would be obvious anyway, but I just like to be transparent with people. So we are in a mode of I'm calling it leading from behind.
Okay.
I've given key initiatives to. I've got two people identified in the company that are my successors that we're working on. The board is working with them. We have a biannual process. It's interesting. At the beginning of the year, the board says, "Here's what you did the past year. The objectives we set out for you for development, how you did. Here's what we need to do, what you need to do the coming year."
Right.
And halfway through the year, it's the reverse. They report out to the board, here's what I've done, here's what I'm working on, here's the things that I'm challenged with where I need support. And
Mm-hmm.
we've had that in process for 3 years, and you can really see the development in them because they've taken it seriously. They know they're potentially in line for the job. And so it's been a very deliberate effort. I have every other month, I have a 3-hour meeting with the three of us,
Mm-hmm.
and it's ask the CEO anything. And they'll say things, Vince, why did you make this decision? I didn't understand that. Or what are you thinking about here? And
Yeah.
it really runs the gamut. And one that happened recently, he said, Vince, I'm not sure about, I think I read somewhere that because we read some McKinsey type articles and
Sure.
then we share thoughts around. He goes, 24/7. He goes, do you not take a vacation? I said, you got to understand that you're on call 24/7. I'm not working 24/7, but
Right.
if something happens, the CEOs, you're never truly off duty. Somebody gets injured, right? You got a safety incident. You're going to
Yeah.
respond to that. No matter when it happens. Client calls you whenever the client decides to call you, you're
Mm-hmm.
going to respond to that. So things happen that are not in your control. So I said, it's not that you're working 24/7. Although it may feel that way sometimes. I said, those are the type of discussions we have. They want to get inside my head and find out, what is happening. What are the things that you're dealing with? They see the day-to-day things. They're our chief operating officers. They know the day-to-day business of things, but they're not getting a chance seeing, well, what's happening behind the scenes, what's going on inside your head
Right.
when you're making certain decisions. And what I've tried to put forth to them is you've got to think about there's a lot of different things. When you're COO, you're thinking about how do I address this business issue and resolve it. But I said, I'm thinking about How does it affect the employee? How does it affect the company? How does it affect our clients? Not just now, but what's it look like 5 years from now? That's the thing I said that you really got to think about is the unintended consequences of a
Oh,
decision
yeah.
you make today. What does that look like in the future? So,
Yeah.
so we're spending a lot of time just brainstorming things. They're picking my brain. It's good to see that they're excited about it. They're trying to learn. They want to position themselves in the best way possible. And so I've even said to the company, I've said, these people, they are running the day-to-day operations of the company. They'll bring me into the loop when they feel they need to bring me into the loop.
Yeah.
And so that they know that, well, I'm not going to run to Vince with this, or, I want people to know I have confidence in them to make the decisions. It's not going to be perfect, right? They're trying to learn the job, and it's not perfect, right? We run into things where I say, you probably should have called me on this or got me involved in it. So we're both learning on that.
Right.
And that's fine. I said that at our shareholder meeting last December. I said I am leading from behind this year. I'm trying to prepare the company for succession. And I said, and that you're going to see me less in the spotlight. I'm trying to put, so when we did our shareholder meeting in April, they did most of the presentation. I kept
Oh,
myself out of a lot of it. So I'm trying to get them comfortable and get the shareholders and the company comfortable with them, in front of things.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
there, a lot of it is some of those little things like that that put a little pressure on them, get them in the spotlight more to have to answer the questions that maybe I would normally answer, those kind of things.
Well, that what that sounds like to me is you are giving them the opportunity to fail intelligently, fail safely, and those are components of psychological safety. And I think a lot of people would appreciate this. I think, Vince, there are people listening to this right now going, "Man, I wish our executives were doing this kind of stuff. I wish they were that attentive to whatever the succession would look like." Because you're taking the guesswork out of it. You're giving these two individuals the opportunity to experience it, but experience it in a where there's a safety net, and you are there to guide them through or lead from behind, if you will. So at some point, and thank you for that. At some point, this transition is going to happen. You are really, if I just think back on our conversations, and it sounds like you're doing this now. You're shifting more from into a coaching role. Does that seem right? Does that sound right?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of coaching going on behind the scenes. I've given them each a key initiative, a major initiative in the company, and there's been once or twice where people have come to me and said, "Oh, I don't like the way so and so is handling this." I says, "Well, you need to talk to them."
Ugh,
But
that's hard.
right, it is because I know what the answer is. I know it has to be done, and but you can't do that. So I'm providing some coaching when I think that and maybe we're getting it's I need to get in there just a little and push a little. I'll do
Right,
that, but I'm trying to be really selective with that. And things have evolved. The initiatives they're both working on are starting to get some momentum. We're starting to get there. It's taken longer than say I would have done it. I know exactly what to do because I've got the experience, but
right.
that's the only way they're going to learn how to do it. And I we're starting to see some results from that. So I wait for them to come to me. I kind of know what the issues are already, but I wait for them and they'll come to me and say, "Man, I'm really struggling with this. How should I do it?
Right.
What's your advice here?" And you got to be careful not to tell them what to do, but what would you do? What do you think the issues are? And again, you can probably already tell for those that don't know me, it's hard for me to be coaching. I know the answer. I just want to give
Oh,
the
yeah.
answer and I want to get there. And so for me personally, it's a struggle.
Well, listen, you were on the field for years. Most of your
Right.
career, you were out there making it happen, highly proactive, task focused. Let's make this stuff happen. And now it's, oh my gosh, that internally, that has got to be so difficult to just sort of sit back and you are naturally proactive, and it's like I feel like I need to say something, but I'm not going to say something because I'm trying to help them grow. That's a hard discipline. That is huge adaptation right there.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. So let me ask you, Vince, for the CEOs and the business leaders that are listening in out there in the Boss Hole Transformation Nation, I think there are a lot of organizations that are way behind in terms of really setting the stage for succession planning and for a CEO to transition away from that and start to bring up their next level leader or leaders, what advice would you have for them? Because this process has been very thoughtful. You've got a lot of people that are involved in this and supporting it. But what pieces of advice could you give these leaders right now that need to really think about succession planning?
Well, I'll tell you the thing that I've learned, and let me preface what I'm going to say with this. So when I became CEO, I had an executive team. It's actually a pretty mature group of leaders.
Mm-hmm.
But as of this year, I've literally transformed my entire executive team into the next generation.
Right.
We did our annual leadership talent reviews a couple weeks ago, and I looked around the room and I said, a lot of them were new to the process, and I said, here's what I want you to understand, and this is 100% true. I looked around the room and I said, I pulled up some notes from 2019 because I'd been doing this since 2015. And I said, every one of your names was listed in 2019 as a future executive team member. I said, and the only ones
Wow.
that weren't with the company in 2019. So I said, I prefaced them to say, we've done a lot of great things with talent development and talent with leadership development. And I
Right.
said, so every one of you has gotten here, it's been part of a process. So when you're thinking about the next leader, I said, the way we do it, the things we do are successful. So my advice is, I find that anytime you're transitioning, say from the 40-year veteran to say somebody that's only been doing it 25 years or new that level, I find that there's as many opportunities with a new leader, younger person coming up, as there certainly challenges with, hey, they don't have the experience at this level to do these things.
Right.
But I also find they're bringing some great ideas and new insights and saying, Vince, we ought to be thinking about doing this. I'm like, good idea. We ought to be thinking about that. So I would say there's two sides of it. Your fear is going to be, I lost my right hand that
Right.
I could rely on. They did it. We were in sync, and that's going to be hard to overcome. But they're going to bring different thinking, and I find it has pushed me in a different direction. So I talked to my board. Actually, and I told them, here's the other second piece of advice. You're the one that actually has to change. You might
Mm.
think you're developing the next generation to get, say, to your role. But I told the board, I said, I'm the one that is really changing the most because I had been working with a very experienced set of leaders that we were in sync. We knew how the other one worked. And I said, they don't know that. And I
Yeah.
can't continue to work. So I've had to change my MO of how I work with them for all of us to be more effective. So I would say those are the two things. What are the opportunities that they bring you? And you've got to be the one that's going to have to change
Yeah.
to get them to the next level. You've got to change how you're working with your team. That doesn't mean they don't change, but
Yeah.
it can't be just them that's changing if it's going to be effective.
Well, I think you just described what is an ongoing process of the emerging workforce. There are different demographics, different perspectives at every level of the organization, and so if you look at it myopically, with just one perspective, it's going to be very different, very hard to hear or understand different methodologies, different input and perspectives. And I think that's super healthy. The thing that really resonated with me on the first point was Vince was from day one, you started looking at leaders. You started to really have, again, kind of lift yourself out of the operational component and look at it more strategically and say, I want to understand the leaders that are in my atmosphere, or excuse me, I want to understand the leaders that are in my sphere, my universe right here at SSOE, and start to pinpoint and identify those people that I think are going to be able to grow up. And it's a process. It's not an event. And one other
Oh, it's definitely a process. It's not an event.
yeah. And the one thing I will go back, you and I were sitting in your office, as a matter of fact, and you showed me this spreadsheet. This may be off topic, but I don't think it is. You showed me a spreadsheet because our listeners will recognize Head, Heart, and Briefcase. I know you know Head, Heart, and Briefcase. And you actually were you had a spreadsheet of people looking at Head, Heart, Briefcase being if they lack the skills or the experience at SSOE to start to elevate into leadership roles, what do we need to give them? What do we need to put in that briefcase? And I know that has been, at least at that time, was a key component of just looking at leadership progression and leadership development.
Well, we're engineers here, so spreadsheets are
But that,
second nature to us.
that's,
Um,
I
but it was
should know
definitely,
better.
I mean, we were doing you saw, we did red, yellow, green analysis
Yep.
on it.
Yep.
And, we would tell them, here's the things that are working. Here's the things you need to focus on. And they dug into it. I mean, people were turning yellow to green and turning red to yellow. I mean, they definitely, focused hard on it. So,
Yeah.
and I think the other thing is engagement of your board of directors.
Yeah.
We have 4 outside directors, not employees of the company, and they have just been tremendous assets to us, to me as CEO, and to these burgeoning leaders on how to get better. And we've got a really strong group of outside directors, and when they talk, people listen,
Yeah.
because they've got nothing to gain. They're not getting, they don't own stock in a company, nothing like that. So they give purely objective advice, and they can be pretty frank and to the point on, things people need to work on. So they've just been a real asset to me in helping evolve this.
Wow. I'll tell you what, this is in the last 30, 40 minutes. If our listeners don't walk away with a couple really solid, impactful ideas, they're not paying attention. No, this has absolutely been great. Vince, what's got you most excited? One last thing. What's got you most
Sure.
excited in the next chapter for Vince DiPofi?
People may chuckle. I've got this 1965 Impala that I want to restore.
Oh, okay.
So that's something that certainly just a fun thing to do. But I'm just, I'm really starting to think about that now.
Yeah.
I want to stay involved. I'm currently on some nonprofit boards. I'd
Right.
like to stay involved in that. I'd like to stay involved in the community. I'm really starting to put some time, but I don't have a concrete answer right now on that.
But it's nice to know that, over the next year or so, you're going to be that'll become more clear, or
Yes.
you'll have that capacity to really start to give that some intentional thought, which is really cool. By the way, how long have you had that Impala?
Just got it recently.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
got it to be a retirement project.
Okay. Fair enough. The only reason I ask is that I worked with a guy years ago who had 3 in various stages of disrepair in his garage, and he had them for a long time, and it really was a sore subject with his lovely wife. He eventually sold them, so you're doing it
I
you're
have
doing it the right.
resolved that issue. I have an off-site garage,
Perfect.
not at the house.
Smart. Very smart. Well, Vince, man, it's always great talking to you. I really appreciate it. We're excited for you. It is again been an honor and a privilege to work with you and all of the folks at SSOE. I would encourage our listeners to go check out their website. I will put a link to it in the show notes. Great story. I mean, a great history of this company that started in Toledo, and I'm born and raised in Toledo, so I'm very proud of it. And as a matter of fact, Al Sanborn was my neighbor in Toledo growing up, and it's a great story. And now it is a global presence, and to a great degree because of the great leadership you've provided there, Vince. So thanks
I have
very
a great team, and we have great people, and most importantly, we have great clients. So I appreciate that, John. And I enjoyed talking to you and talking about this. I'm excited for the future of SSOE past Vince DiPofi. I think it looks strong. I think we got some great leaders coming up. So I remain excited about the business and the company.
No doubt. Well, listen, everybody, thanks for listening in, and we will catch you next time on the Boss Hole Chronicles. Thanks very much for checking out this episode of the Boss Hole Chronicles. It was so good to have you here. And if you have your own Boss Hole story that you want to share with the Boss Hole Transformation Nation, just reach out. You can email us at mystory@thebossholechronicles.com. Again, mystory@thebossholechronicles.com. We'll see you next time.